stopping it right here. Basically, this is what's known as agent mode for Azure Copilot. You have to turn it on top of turning on Copilot in the first place inside the Azure world. And then now what's happening is you can think of this as an additional resource to your troubleshooting team to be able to help you figure some stuff out. You can actually see here on the screen, look at the very, very top right up here, reasoning, trying to figure out what's going wrong with this particular machine that had some experience of connecting issues to it. So that's the first thing that it does, is that it can go through, determine symptoms of what's going wrong because of my initial prompt, but then it goes off and starts talking to different tools that then interrogate and get more information from the system.
Yeah, and again, I like that it's actually telling me what it's doing because I'm learning in the process too.
Right, and this is all saved in the history on the left-hand side that you can go back to and take a look at after the fact and also share with your other colleagues as well.
Welcome to Update and Restart, the show that checks your career for updates, downloads and installs them. I'm Sonia Cuff.
I'm Rick Claus. Good to see you again. Now, we're going to be taking a little bit of a different approach for this particular one. We introduced the concepts of what was going on, just starting to use AI. I said the word AI again. So this one's also going to be talking about AI, but a slightly different way of how to approach and use it as a tool.
Yeah, because I think some of the examples seem a little bit lightweight. Like I know how to stop and restart a VM, but when I think about the previous iterations of our career, we went through a time where we were like playing with scripting. So it kicks 32 scripts and then PowerShell came along. So we had this revolution of could we automate some of the mundane things with PowerShell scripts? And that was kind of the big sort of first step into putting a bit more structure and tooling around the tasks that we do. Right.
So in this particular way of working, we're going to be introducing the concept of doing a bit more of an agent level of work. Think of it like augmenting your team. But you know what? Enough about this. Let's cut to the demo. Now, I do want to caveat for these demos that we're showing in this particular episode and other future episodes, they are recorded ahead of time to make it so that we can actually compress and expand on different points. So these are real. These are not fake, made up type of things. So here you've got your, again, Azure portal using Copilot for Azure. But the big difference now is we've switched from the default mode of simply turning on Copilot inside of the Azure environment. And now we're going to be going and using what's known as agent mode. So take a look at this. Application was deployed. A data job is found to be failing, so I wanted to SSH into the VM, but was unable to connect. Let's kick off a Copilot agent to help me troubleshoot the connection issues with the VM. So stopping it right here, basically this is what's known as agent mode for Azure Copilot. You have to turn it on top of turning on Copilot in the first place inside the Azure world. And then now what's happening is you can think of this as an additional resource to your troubleshooting team to be able to help you figure some stuff out. You can actually see here on the screen, look at the very, very top right up here, reasoning, trying to figure out what's going wrong with this particular machine that had some experience of connecting issues to it. So that's the first thing that it does, is that it can go through, determine symptoms of what's going wrong because of my initial prompt, but then it goes off and starts talking to different tools that then interrogate and get more information from the system.
Yeah, and again, I like that it's actually telling me what it's doing because I'm learning in the process too.
Right, and this is all saved in the history on the left-hand side that you can go back to and take a look at after the fact and also share with your other colleagues as well. Let's take a look. A series of checks and diagnostics and pinpoints that there's an issue with FSTab. Okay. It finds that there are invalid entries on the FSTab file, which prevents the system from reaching the SSH service. The agent then presents CLI commands that I can easily copy and paste into PowerShell to fix the issue and get the VM back online. Yeah, so here, it determined there's a problem. It then came up with a suggestion, doesn't know if it's gonna work or not. I have to use my own domain expertise to determine if this is the right thing to do. My Linux skills are not the best, but you know, they're a bit rusty. But you know, these look like some very potentially simple things to go off and do a repair on. And so I literally can just go and take my bash commands, copy and paste them into the PowerShell window.
Look, my Linux skills are non-existent, but I like that it's going to suggest something and then put it into my hands whether I actually want to do this or not.
Right. looking through numerous logs to pinpoint the issue. The agent can detect the issue by running a series of automated checks and help me get my VM back up and running. Within minutes, I can bring the VM back online without deep Linux troubleshooting expertise.
Nice.
I can even create a support request for helping me fix the issue. The support agent can pick up the current troubleshooting context and help me create a support request all within the same chat.
Okay, you had me right there, that it's actually going to go and create the support ticket for me and put some level of detail about what it did.
Right. Again, because it knows that we're using a ticketing system because of who it is that's going off and doing something. It just went through and found the resources of a possible troubleshooting fix to the issue of not being able to log into the box. And then it can take that entire chat history that you called out on the left-hand side for what it was looking for and how it solved the problem, and include that context inside that ticket that it's going to go off and now store that you can then refer to in the future.
That is so good, especially when you have a team environment and you might have people that move or somebody else that'll pick up the issue on a different day. And so tracking the history of what you've done is a big part of IT operations for future scenarios and to learn from as well. So if I don't have to manually go in and create the ticket, I'm so happy.
Now, again, let's put some other context around this. How about some guardrails? Again, it's doing a bit more autonomous stuff after it's had the proper context and what to do and the proper research. It didn't prompt me to ask if it should go off and do these things because the entire process was more specific. So there is a little extra level of autonomy that happens here, but it's still under the context of my user account for resources that it's going to go off and go and work with inside of Azure. So you got those kind of guardrails on there. And again, if it was going to do something that was more invasive other than simply fixing an entry in a file or something like that, it could have come back and asked me for, or I could have put that into our initial discussion. So you really have to kind of think of this new agent mode for how this is working as the next iteration or the next step of augmenting, again, your domain expertise using AI tooling to go off and do a troubleshooting of a particular event and documenting what happened.
Yeah, and it's interesting, this is more than just intelligent search results, right? Because in the past, if I've got a problem with a server, I'm going to go on the internet, I'm going to search for these particular error messages or the symptoms that I've got. I'm going to wade through search results to figure out what's relevant and what's not, see if there are some suggestions in there for me to go and try. So it feels like it's kind of speeding up all of that process because it's doing the analysis for me and then coming back with a suggestion of what it thinks I should try. So I'm still going to need to understand why I'm trying this thing or, you know, if this doesn't work, why. I'm still going to need to know a level of knowledge. It's not outsourcing me completely, but it feels like this tool is going to speed up how I would do my own research and troubleshooting.
Absolutely. And we should call out the fact that this is still in preview for how this looks. Our engineers are still ideating on the different capabilities that these agents will be able to do. We've got them classified as a bunch of maybe 5 or 6 different buckets of the main things that infrastructure professionals would want to do. You have to, once again, turn on Copilot for Azure, Azure Copilot inside of the portal. And then at the bottom, currently for the preview mode, there is a apply to have access to these preview bits to be able to go off and try this out. And obviously, we're going to be sharing information back and forth. You do have to turn that on. And then in the prompt that you normally would be using is a little button that you have to press that says turn on agent mode, and then you can go off and give that a try.
Okay, position.
Right. So that's basically the next iteration of doing some agentic kind of work, but hang on to your hats. There's more coming. There's more stuff coming because this changes all the time.
It always works in the demo though, right? So if I want to learn a bit more about these capabilities that are coming out, what's a good resource to go check out?
Right. So for this one, what I would recommend is that we go off and take a look at the introduction of doing agent mode stuff, early release information, and that's coming from a 2025 Microsoft Ignite session called BRK 145, if I check my notes just to make sure I got them right, Introduction to the new Azure Copilot for the new era of intelligent agents. I don't know if I watched that session with that particular lofty title, but the meat of the session is really, really cool because it breaks down how Copilot in Azure works, how the new agentic mode is taking place and how you can turn it on, and then also discusses some of the buckets and some of the guardrails that are in place as well.
Nice. Go check out that video for those new capabilities. And now for something a little bit more lighthearted. So we had somebody send us this really cool website, Rick. I want you to go to limehawk.io and tell me what you think.
Right. So again, you can give us feedback and some ideas for what we can do for the show and other episodes. I'll give you that information in just a second. But this is absolute gold from the old timers perspective of having an entire website talking about your consulting company. This happens to be based out of Knoxville, Tennessee, where they've themed it entirely as a Windows 95 application and environment. Look at this.
The nostalgia.
Even the pop-ups are there. Look at this. For overpaying for IT, closing it off, watch out, warnings for violations, for compliance audits. But the gold is in this interface. Look at this. You've got hyperlinks to see what's going on inside of the environment. Across the tabs, you've got industries that they work in, fully functional UI for what it looks like, different reports that they can go off and pull for you and do for you. And then I love this, including testimonials for different satisfaction that companies have had so far with them. But look at this. They even have a game that you can play.
Oh my goodness.
The old-fashioned Minesweeper to be able to go off and do different
How many
things.
hours did we waste on that? Yeah,
Far too much.
You don't need to confess. But the other cool thing about this is it's not only a fully functional website that tells you about their company and its services. Go to the settings tab, because like you could in true Windows 95 style, you can retheme this site.
Oh, including...
And pick whatever color theme. Hey!
Including hot dog.
Hot dog stand for the win.
Oh my goodness, I love this.
We are tripping down memory lane here.
Absolutely. So again, if you're interested, please let us know what you think about the show. If you have some interesting ideas of topics that we should be covering about rebooting your career and applying a hot patch to your individual skills as an IT professional, as an infrastructure person, or if you have some funny websites to go off and check out, or even some funny stories, we would love to hear from you. Send us an email, updateandrestart@microsoft.com, and you never know, your topic, your idea might show up on one of these shows.
And just before you go, I want you to try and close that window and see what happens.
Let's see what happens when I try to close that and shut down that system.